Tonight's big stories. Signatures for the People's Initiative have reportedly reached the 12% threshold required by the Constitution. What's the next step? We'll get some insights from former House Committee on Constitutional Amendments Chairman Alfredo Garbin.
How is the UniTeam doing nearly 2 years after winning the 2022 elections in landslide fashion? Vice President Sara dropped some hints in an interview with reporters.
And one House panel has approved a motion calling on the President to extend the January 31 consolidation deadline for the PUV modernization program, which the President seems to be considering. We'll speak to Santa Rosa Representative Dan Fernandez about this later on. Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Sean Yao.
And I'm Maricel Halili.
All right, now over the past few weeks, basically every single night, we have been discussing this People's Initiative campaign on the ground, as well as the controversy surrounding it. But now it has come to this. The number of signatures gathered for this campaign to amend the 1987 Constitution has reportedly hit the required 12% of all registered voters. Now, this claim was made by House Ways and Means Committee Chairman and Albay Congressman Joey Salceda. According to Salceda, 12.1% of registered voters in the country have provided their signatures in support of the People's Initiative for charter change. Aside from that, Salceda says that proponents of the People's Initiative were also able to gather at least 3% of voters' signatures per district, which is also the other requirement under the Constitution. So, what's the next move? Let's hear it from Representative Salceda.
We have already reached the mandate of the people. So the Constitution should operate as provided.
Kailan po yung actual filing ng petition?
Well, talagang inaayos lang, syempre. And of course, I think the request for validation by the COMELEC, I think is the necessary next step.
Pero syempre ayaw ng senators dito.
Pero wait.
Oh.
Anong meaning nung we have reached the 12% requirement? We meaning sila ba talaga yung pasimuno? Kasi for now, wala pang umaako eh.
Wala pa. Malalaman natin yan once na nag-file na sila ng petition. Sino yung magpa-front sa
Sino nga
COMELEC?
harap?
Oo.
Pero kung ganun ba, dapat syempre regular person, di ba? Kasi technically, it's a people's initiative. So, it could be me, surprise, or it could be you, or anybody, really.
Uy, pero ang dami pang issue ha. Kasi paano yung barangay officials? Paano pag nakisama sila? Questionable pa siya whether or not they are allowed to be part of the People's Initiative. Kasi they are supposedly non-partisan. Ang dami mga issue. Sino
so
ba yung naglalakad ng People's Initiative? Hindi ba mga taga-barangay yun?
Pero tama ka dyan, no? Siyempre, yung talagang humaharang dito right now is yung Senado. Kasi talagang sila yung nanganganib na mawalan ng boses sa lahat ng ito. Especially since talagang, again, reminder, no? Sa dami ng charter change issues and different methods, minsan nakakalimutan natin na inuudyok lang naman or yung tinutulak ng People's Initiative is yung voting process on how they will vote for future amendments to the charter. Nakakatakot siya.
Oo. Kaso kapag pinush nila yung People's Initiative, ang mangyayari baka maging joint voting siya. So pagka nagkaroon ng joint voting, Senate and Congress, parang malulusaw yung Senate considering na 24 lang sila.
Exactly. Yun yung worst nightmare ng Senate right now. Kaya nga nakita natin no, na napaka-historic moment. Lahat sila 24 pumirma sa isang piece of paper. Bihira kasi nga magyari yun. No? Tulad ng sinabi sa atin kagabi ni Senator J.V. Ejercito, may gentleman's agreement na raw between the House Speaker and the Senate President in front of PBBM. Nagkasundo sila na dapat Constituent Assembly at yung Senate yung magte-take ng lead on this. Assuming na magsa-stop yung People's Initiative pero hindi pa rin siya nag-stop.
Yeah, magkaiba pa rin sila ng tono ng Congress. But to the Senate's manifesto, may response si Salceda. He said dapat taong bayan ang hayaang magdesisyon. Let's listen to that. Ayong kanina.
Well, yun din naman, basically, yun din naman yung sinabi ni House Speaker Romualdez, diba? It is the right of the people. And, I mean, facts lang naman yun eh. Totoo naman, it is the right of the people. Pero yung ini-issue kasi ngayon is that, yung people ba talaga, doon ba sa talaga nagsimula yung initiative sa normal na taong bayan?
And I think it's also good to take note na, okay, papakinggan natin yung taong bayan, pero yung 24 senators, taong bayan din ang pumili dyan. Hindi naman sila basta pumunta lang sa Senado tapos sabihin nila na legislators ako. No, we also chose kung sino yung mga uupo doon. Now, the thing is, does the percentage reported by Salceda reflect the actual number of signatures received by the COMELEC? Let's bring in JC Cosico to answer that. JC?
Walma said the figures will still have to undergo verification, but for now, the COMELEC shared that based on their actual data, they have received signature forms from over 1,000 towns and cities across the nation. Here's COMELEC Chairman George Garcia explaining their estimates.
May mga nakita po kami ng mga signatures sa isang distrito, halimbawa more than 20% pa. Merong distrito ng more than 15%. Madami po halos ng mga distrito ay sumusobra sa 3%.
Among the advocates of the People's Initiative is the group PIRMA, which stands for People's Initiative for Reform and Action. They are among those gathering signatures for the campaign. In an interview at the Kapihan sa Manila Bay, the group debunked the alleged signature buying happening on the ground. But they say their campaign may take 3 more months to finish.
Magpa-file kami as soon as we reach the number, the threshold, the minimum threshold that the law as required of us. Tingin po namin, kaya po yan.
But if you ask the COMELEC, it's unlikely for a plebiscite for the People's Initiative to take place this year and in 2025, as it will be preparing for 2 polls for next year. These are the midterm elections and the barangay and SK polls.
Kung naipali na maagad, sana mas maaga din po na kaya po namin. January to April, crucial po yun sa COMELEC. Sapagkat dyan po tayo magpiprint ng mga balota, dyan po tayo mag-cleansing ng mga list of voters.
Garcia says that if the plebiscite can be held by October this year because of time constraints, it will most likely be pushed to 2026 at the earliest. But apart from time issues, COMELEC notes that they are also short on budget. They say some 13 billion pesos will be needed for the plebiscite under the People's Initiative. So even if submissions are on time, the COMELEC says they don't have funds to hold a plebiscite this year. Garcia says to make this possible, they would have to resort to requesting additional funds, which could either be a supplemental budget or it could come from the President's Contingency Fund. Back to you.
Thanks for that report, JC Cosico. After signing a manifesto against the ongoing People's Initiative campaign, the Senate has also decided to suspend discussions on charter change, including the resolution of both houses filed by Senate President Mig Subiri. Senators confirmed that resolution of both houses number 6 has been shelved for the meantime, after continuous efforts to push for a People's Initiative on the ground. Signature campaigns have been launched across different localities with the goal of pursuing a joint vote between the 2 chambers of Congress in amending the Constitution. Senators believe it's useless to push their proposed economic amendments for now with the ongoing signature drive.
Disinterested na nga yung mga membro ng Senado, joint resolution na yan. Oo, nagsilbi dahil walang matinong kausap. Isusulong natin yun with the premise na ihinto rin nila yung PI na ginagawa nila. Eh ngayon, hindi nila hinihinto. So bakit pa? Ano pang gamit nung kuwan na yan?
So ayun na nga, ano na ang magiging plan of action ng Senado on Chacha moving forward? Let's bring back in our Senate correspondent, Mean Los Baños, to answer that. Mean, How are senators feeling after signing that joint manifesto? And what is their next move?
Yes, Sean, some of the senators that we were able to talk to are still clearly disappointed over the People's Initiative campaign. They insist that pushing for joint voting over charter amendments would open the doors for possible abuses.
Hindi na nga ito People's Initiative, peso initiative na ito. If you look at how it's crafted, no, pwede magpatawag ang speaker, pwede magpatawag ang Senate President. No? Pag nagpatawag ng speaker, dahil mas marami siyang tao, no? Almost 300 plus versus 24. Pag nagpatawag siya i-amenda ng Constitution, lahat pwede na mag-propose. Pwede nang i-postpone muna yung elections dahil pahahabain in term.
Senator Gatchalian also fears a possible political crisis.
Pag nagbangayan ang mababang kapulungan at ang Senado, no, magkakaroon tayo ng political crisis. At ang kinakatukutan ko sa isang political crisis, walang batas ang ma-approve. Baka yung budget hindi rin ma-approve dahil nagbabangayan eh. At pag yan ang nangyari, maraming serbisyo ang masasakripisyo. Pero kung hindi mag-uusap to, magbabangayan, masasakripisyo dito yung mga mahalaga nating mga batas.
For now, the Senate is bent on investigating the alleged bribery happening alongside the signature drive for People's Initiative. They plan to summon the group behind the signature campaign to determine who is funding these efforts. For Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel, one other option would be to file a case before COMELEC and question its ministerial duty to receive the signature forms.
I think we already have a justiciable controversy here and we can act. So we can act, kung makita pa natin, we can act politically by calling on the people to not to sign, and for those who have signed to withdraw their signature. We can act legally in the sense of filing cases to already question what the COMELEC is doing.
Sean, senators are now busy looking for additional evidence on incidents of bribery amid the ongoing People's Initiative campaign. Senator Bato de la Rosa, for one, proposed to have the hearing in Davao, where many have allegedly executed affidavits claiming to have been tricked or fooled into signing the People's Initiative document. Sean?
All right, thanks so much for that, Man Los Baños. So ito naman, mainit-init pa. House Speaker Martin Romualdez's response to the Senate's protests against charter change via a People's Initiative. Ang sagot niya, hindi ko papatulan. Romualdez says he will not comment on the Senate's statements against the House's push for Chacha, but the Speaker did say that Congress is still willing to cooperate with the upper house if the Senate decides to push through with the resolution of both houses number 6, which seeks to amend only some economic provisions of the Constitution. Romualdez notes that these economic amendments are a priority of the Marcos administration.
Hindi ko pinapatulan yung mga ganong mga salita. That is their right. I respect that right all the time. I respect always the opinion of others. I may not necessarily agree. I respect the right, di ba? Yun ang respeto ko yung right nila na magsalita ng ganon, pero I will not agree. What I will tell you, what I'm ready to do, I'm ready to work with them hand in hand. As I said, we are ready to embrace the resolution of both houses.
Romualdez also noted that the People's Initiative is a right of the Filipino public. He says, though, that the priority really are amendments to economic provisions for now. At sa susunod na lang pag-aaralan ang pag-amend sa political provisions. Let's listen to that.
Dito sa People's Initiative, that is the option of the people, di ba? That's their prerogative. That's their right, no? Pero dito rin, I'm looking and I'm working with the Senate, no? And there has been a proposition of a resolution of both houses to propose amendments to the economic provisions in our Constitution. Yan ang priority natin dito sa House. At although hindi perfect pa, baka sa sunod, baka pwede pag-isipan na pag-aralan din yung mga political. Pero ako, sige, unahan na lang natin yung economic provisions, unahan na natin, prioritize natin. Pero yung PI, kumbaga, talagang yan ang right po ng taong bayan.
talaga namang mabigat, mabilis at napakainit nitong mga latest developments in the push for charter change. So to help us unpack all these, joining us tonight on the program is former Ako Bicol Party List Representative and now Mayor Alfredo Garbin Jr. He was also a former chairman of the House Committee on Constitutional Amendments in the 18th Congress. Mayor Garbin, good evening.
Good evening, Sean and Maricel. Magandang gabi po sa inyong dalawa.
Okay, so anong nababasa nyo dito, no, Mayor? House versus Senate na ba talaga ang nakikita natin at nagyayari dito, no? Ukol sa Chacha, based on Speaker Romualdez' latest statements, parang meron talagang openness for future moves to amend political provisions. Kasi sabi niya, no, for now, economic, ganyan. No? So now, whether through a people's initiative or a resolution of both houses, ano po ba? What's your take? Anong basa niyo sa lahat na to?
Ako kasi, I will be speaking as one of the movant and petitioner for the People's Initiative. Advocacy ko na to matagal na eh. In fact, when I chair the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, naipasa natin sa 18th Congress yung amending restrictive economic provision of the Constitution. Pero sa tagal ng panahon at sa dami ng proposal, talaga ang culprit naman talaga dyan ang Senado. Palaging inupuan nila at dinidribble nila at walang nangyayari. All can say that they are really the graveyard of all those needed constitutional amendments. Kaya nga ho, itong People's Initiative na ito, this was born out of frustration. Walang ginagawang Senado, yung House of Representatives, palagi naman ginagawa yung kinang constitutional duty to propose the needed amendments in the Constitution. Pagdating sa Senado, hindi ina-actionan. And therefore, we have no other choice but to use the third mode, this People's Initiative. So once and for all, umusad itong needed change in our Constitution.
Okay, Mayor, syempre pag tinanong mo yung Senate, no, ang sasabihin nila mawawala ang checks and balances. The reason kung bakit nila parating inupuan, no, itong mga suggestions to change a constitution is precisely because they are safeguarding the rights, etc., etc. Okay, narinig
They
na
are
natin yan lahat.
safeguarding their personal interests, which is to lord over what they want in the Constitution. They are more of self-preservation rather than serving the general interest and welfare of the Filipino people. Alam nyo, yung restrictive economic provision has been there for the past 37 years. And that has been infused in the 1987 Constitution, not based on practicality, but on the notion of nationalism. But 37 years ago, hindi natin pinag-uusapan yung globalization and liberalization. So that right now, what happened was, after 37 years, tayo yung number 1 very restrictive economy in the ASEAN. And number 7 tayo, kulila tayo pagdating sa pag-entice ng mga foreign direct investor because of that very restrictive economic provisions in the Constitution that resulted into what? Monopoly and oligopoly. In fact, because of that restrictive economic provision, we were forced to, rely on those Filipino businesses that are undercapitalized. Kaya yung ating public utilities ngayon, makita mo talagang does not serve really the interest and what the Filipino deserves. And tayo pa ba ay mag-aantay pa at magdadramahan pa dito? And that's why the Senate should not play a victim here. We should look into how they were so inefficient in acting on the needed change in the Constitution. Nung 18th Congress, kinahon namin yung yung economic amendments. Sinabi pa namin doon, voting separately. Ano ginawa nila? Inupuan rin nila. 19th Congress, ganun pa rin. Inuupuan pa rin nila. Nagkumahog lang sila gumalaw yung nalaman nila na meron ng People's Initiative. So, I think the Senate should not play a victim here.
Okay. Sir, we understand your point na sabi nga po ninyo, yung Senate, yung kumbaga, parang laging humaharang doon sa mga previous attempts. But let me reiterate Sean's question earlier. Paano yung checks and balances? Sino yung magbabantay sa Congress kapag gumulong na po itong usapin na to?
Oo, napaka-valid po ng point na yun.
Maliho yung concept nila ng checks and balance. Ang gusto nila ng check and balance, kami ang magdidikta. Kung ayaw naming 24, walang magagawa ang House. But in a form of checks and balance wherein Congress sitting as Constituent Assembly, everyone will be considered as a component element of that Constituent Assembly. Senators and congressmen alike will be there to serve not as senator, not as respective representative of the district, but serving the general welfare of the Filipino. Meaning, if you want check and balance, you should participate and then air your concern and the wisdom behind any amendment, proposed amendment to the Constitution. But the essence of, equal representation is one member equals one vote. And that is pursuant to the democratic system of our government. Hindi pwedeng yung 24 ang maghahari-harian sa buong Kongreso. Kung anong gusto nila, yun lang ang dapat. Hindi po. The checks and balance would say one member equals one vote. And at the end of the day, Sean and Maricel, that proposal will still remain a proposal because that will be subjected to a plebiscite called for that purpose. Taong bayan pa rin ang mag-aaproba. Bakit takot na takot ang Senado ipasa to sa taong bayan? Remember that we are a Republican and democratic state and sovereignty resides in the people and all government authorities emanate from them. Bakit gusto nila kontrolin lang ng 24 senador? Bakit ayaw nila to ipasa sa taong bayan?
Okay. Mayor, quick clarification lang. No? Nung unang pumutok itong issue, one of the first lawmakers that we spoke to was all your fellow Bicolano, no? Si Rep. Ed Selagman. Yun yung time po na lumabas po yung mga pictures doon sa Ellis Hotel ba, kung hindi ako nagkakamali. Sa Albay may mga pictures. Andun po kayo sa picture. Does that mean you are really part of this initiative, the main group who is pushing for the People's Initiative? Can you clarify your involvement with this whole initiative? Are we understanding it right?
Yes. I was then invited as a resource speaker. But ngayon, sumama na ako sa movement and I will now be one of the petitioner dito sa People's Initiative.
Kailan po ninyo i-file? Kasi yun po yung next step, di ba? Sabi po ni another fellow Bicolano, Representative Joey Salceda, ay 12.1% na raw ang mga lagda na nakalap ng grupo. The next step then would be to really file an official petition with the COMELEC. Is this going to happen anytime soon? What can we expect?
You know, the constitutional requirement is for each legislative district to have at least 3% of the total registered voters, and in the national level, 12% of the total registered voters. The moment we are sure that we have that numbers, which is constitutionally mandated, then we will file the said petition. Naninigurado lang po kami.
Okay.
Aren't you concerned about the issues on buying allegations na kapalit ng ayuda, pipirma sila dun sa
Wala
People's
po
Initiative?
Lahat lang aligasyon Kasi ang masama po dito, yung aligasyon, is equivalent to, kumbaga, parang you took it as a gospel truth. Parang allegation is equivalent to, evidence. But did we ever find a person step forward and say na binayaran siya? Yung ayuda, ang sabi ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno, wala silang nire-release na tupad or ahix for that matter. So these are mere allegations. All assertions that are not supported by any positive testimony. Kaya nga po, ang masama dito, instead na tutukan at tingnan yung magandang objeto ng People's Initiative at kung ano ang ikakaganda nito sa ating bayan, nabaling ho doon sa mga aligasyon na wala naman suportadong ebidensya.
Sir, with all due respect, meron po kasing nakunan yung aming reporter na interview. Panayam po doon sa allegedly pumirma doon sa People's Initiative, a resident of Quezon City, na sinasabi na galing daw sa isang congressman ng ayuda. So hindi po ba ito enough evidence?
Sean and Maricel, if that is true, then it has to be presented. And those signatures that were secured or afforded material consideration should not be taken into account. Ibig sabihin, tanggalin yon yung mga signatures. But you're talking about millions of signatures. Gusto sabihin, ito bang milyon-milyon na pumirma dito ay lahat to binayaran, binigyan ng ayuda. I mean, that's to be, there has to be a concrete proof that will show that majority of the signatures were procured through, bribery or, due considerations why they signed that people's initiative. So
That's right. Pero
we should be fair about reporting and, generalizing. Kasi kami sa Bicol region, we were able to get at least 16% of the signatures, albay. And siguro we cannot generalize or say that those were procured through, material considerations.
nevertheless, no, Mayor, whether or not ma-prove ito in court using evidence, etc., etc., one thing remains. For sure, this will be a cause of delay. For sure, maantala yung timeline. First question, Mayor, meron na po bang timeline? Kasi ang sabi ng COMELEC, imposible daw ito ma-achieve until 2026 at the earliest. What do you have to say about that? Or will they be forced to? Once you file a petition, wala
set
naman...
a timeline. What we are saying here is that as long as we were able to comply with the constitutional requirement, and then we will proceed with the process. Hindi pwedeng time-bound to kasi magkakamali lang. And the haste make ways, baka masayang lang to gaya ng Lambino case na kung saan diniklara ng Korte Suprema as unconstitutional. So we're very careful in gathering signatures and making the registered voter understand what they sign so that pagdating sa anuman na legal na aspeto at mga opposition na alam naman namin darating dyan ay kaya naming harapin.
Can you share with us, Mayor, how you explain this signature drive? Let's say you're trying to get a signature and you're trying to explain that what this People's Initiative is really going to do, ang punto nito lahat ay ang botohan lang. Meaning wala ngang economic provisions, amendments na magyayari. Ang magyayari lang ay yung botohan. How do you get that point across to the ordinary Filipino, perhaps yung mga hindi nakapagtapos? I'm just so curious kung paano niyo po ine-explain. Kasi pati po ako medyo matagal bago nag-sink in na ako yung botohan lang pala yung pinag-uusapan natin dito. How do you tell them that it's really better yung joint voting?
Well, it starts with saying tayo naging chairman. Tayo na ipasa natin yung economic amendments. Ito'y inupuan ng Senado. Ano nangyari? Dahil merong ambiguity doon sa procedural requirement sa pagpasa ng isang proposal. So ano ang hadlang? Yung Senado. Palaging inuupuan nila at ito ay wine-weaponize nila yung kanilang numbers when it comes to voting separately. So ano ang solusyon? We need to make it clear sa ating saligang batas na pag nagpo-propose tayo ng amendment in a constituent assembly, it should be voting jointly para wala ng hadlang doon sa mga makabuluhang panukala sa pag-amenda sa ating konstitusyon. At ito ay nakasaad kaagad sa signature sheet na kung saan mababasa ng ng registered voter para maintindihan nila kaagad.
Sir, kahapon may sinabi si President Bongbong Marcos na malinaw na for now, kapag ipinution charter change, okay siya sa economic provisions, pag-amyenda. Pero set aside yung mga issues on politics, yung mga political amendments. What do you think of this? Okay ba sa inyo itong posisyon ni Presidente?
Wala na po akong pakialam doon dahil alam nyo, pag naipasa namin itong joint voting, dinelegate na po namin yung trabaho sa Kongreso. At yung proposal sa Kongreso, gusto ko man ilimit sa economic amendments, sila na rin ang magpo-propose sa Kongreso kung ano pa yung mga amendments na pwede nila isama na pangangailangan ng ating bayan at ng panahon ngayon. So ang amin lamang is just to remove this roadblock that, time immemorial has been used by the Senate in blocking those meaningful constitutional amendments.
Right. Mayor, one quick question. Are you still in touch or in coordination with the current House Speaker, Martin Romualdez? Nabanggit na po kasi ni Speaker na I'm sure you've heard this, willing daw siya mag-cooperate with the Senate kung isusulong ulit yung resolution of both houses number 6. Your thoughts on that?
Mas maganda ho na magtulong-tulungan na lang. Ang masama ho dyan kasi ang Senado na naman, ino-hostage na naman yung People's Initiative, ginagawa na naman na rason, na samantalang ang bola nasa kanila. Matagal lang ginawa ng House Representatives ang kanilang trabaho. Siguro naman na gawin na nila yung kanilang homework or yung kanilang assignment na matagal nang nakabinbin sa kanilang, kumbaga, sa Senate. And it's high time that the Senate should act on it and act with dispatch so that we can, resolve this economic, needs of our country. The international investment community keeps on prodding Congress to remove that restrictive economic provisions because ang dami ng dalubhasa, ang dami ng literature, ang dami ng akademya nagsasabi na that's a disincentive to our economy. And while other countries keep opening their economy, tayo naman, we keep on, maintaining this restrictive economic provision, which should not be there. It should be legislated. It should not be in the charter. Kaya tayo ngayon ay nakagapos dyan sa iyang provision na yan na, kumbaga, nagdala sana ng maraming mamumuhunang dayuhan, kapital at trabaho sa ating bayan. Pero ngayon, pumunta na lang sa ibang bayan dahil doon mas open ang pagninegosyo. Hindi gaya dito sa atin.
Okay, thank you so much for being so candid with us tonight. Former Ako Bicol Party List Representative and Mayor Alfredo Garbin Jr.
Up next, President Bongbong Marcos has approved an extension for the PUV consolidation as part of the PUV modernization programs. The details on that when we return. Keep it here on One News.
We are still watching the big story here on One News.
President Bongbong Marcos has extended the January 31 deadline for the consolidation of jeepneys under the PUV modernization program. Just this afternoon, the House Committee on Transportation continued with its hearing on the PUVM as they called on the president to extend the deadline. Lawmakers stated that there are inconsistencies and irregularities in the implementation of consolidation entered into by cooperatives or corporations and manufacturers. Ngayon kasi, PUVs without established cooperatives and corporations will be allowed to operate until January 31. Come February 1, they will be considered colorum and will be apprehended by authorities. According to LTFRB data, almost 2,000 routes have yet to have consolidated PUVs. And while the agency has said that they will be issuing special permits, which will allow other consolidated entities to ply these routes, some congressmen were not all too pleased with the move.
mag-issue ka ng special permit doon sa mga bago. Pero mag-dispense mo naman yung mga old. Yun yung problema natin. And the Speaker of the House is so very clear on that. Dapat walang na-displace na mga drivers at saka operators.
Pag may pumasok po sa ibang lugar, baka hindi po niyo makontrol, baka hindi niyo po mapigil yung galit po ng tao. Siguro po meron kayong hidden agenda na papapasokin niyo sila. Doon sa talagang may mga ruta.
Let's discuss this extension further. Joining us live via Zoom tonight is Santa Rosa Representative Dan Fernandez. Kong, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Michelle and Sean. Good evening sa inyo.
Marisol, sir.
Maricel. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Kong, how were the DOTR convinced, no, to extend the PUV modernization program? Because obviously the PCO or Communications Office announced that President Marcos has finally approved the recommendation of Transportation Secretary Bautista for that 3-month extension. Nagtataka po kami, ano po yung arguments that convinced them to extend?
Well, most likely the President, most likely yung ating pong Secretary of DOTR, si Jimmy Bautista, went to the President, or he was called by the President, because there is a clamor for the extension of the modernization program of the government. This stemmed from the press release of the Speaker, Martin Romualdez, that there is a alleged corruption that is ongoing on the modernization program. And thereby, motu proprio, we have started the investigation on this alleged corruption on the program of the DOTR. And last week, when we conducted it, we have moved for the adoption and urging the President to reconsider the deadline on January 31. And today we have discussed a lot of things, and there's a lot of revelation on the irregularities that was violated by not only of the DOTR and the LTFRB, but the cooperatives, no, and the different manufacturers have we can call some indecent or clandestine effort to hide something from the public. And you have to consider that this agreement that being conceptualized by the manufacturers and the cooperatives must undergo a certain regulation. And
Sorry,
basically, the regulation...
Allow me to cut you off,
Yes.
but the PCO, the Presidential Communications Office, actually said that the extension, no, is only to give time for those who express na willing sila mag-consolidate pero hindi pa nakakapag-consolidate. Wala naman pong nabanggit about all these things. So,
Exactly, there are some gaps on the program that was initiated last 2018, 5 years ago. And we have seen these different gaps pertaining to the consolidation. Doon lamang pa kasi sa consolidation, nakikita na natin the different corruption that being committed. Why? You will notice that the process of trying to procure a unit, it goes to a lot of different process. Like, meron siyang tinatawag na Philippine National Standard. Itong PNS ito, ini-issue to ng DTI, and thereafter, binibigyan sila ng Certificate of Clearance by the DOTR. In a regular bidding process, like for example, sa mga LGU, ang ginagawa dyan, meron silang tinatawag na accreditation, and thereafter, nagkakaroon sila ng tinatawag na bidding process. But here, we have to consider that there is a government subsidy. Pera ng taong bayan ang pumapasok dito. But unfortunately, the backstop on the LTFRB sa DOTR, hindi na sila nag-process ng tinatawag nating bidding dahil nga it involves a lot of money. Kanina nga, you have to consider na we have discussed like 91 units, ang price niya is 2.6 million. And this is 215 million. That did not undergo any specific bidding. And in accordance with the Republic Act 10667, kailangan yung magkaroon ng tinatawag na competitive behavior ang mga corporation at itong tinatawag natin cooperative because they are considered as one of the juridical entity. And that's the reason why we told them that the LTFRB should adhere to a program wherein the PCC will be the final arbiter of those consolidation problems that being encountered by the different cooperatives.
Pero, sir, balikan ko lang yung sa decision ni President Bongbong Marcos about sa extension. What does it tell about the decision of the President? I understand he had a meeting with Secretary Bautista this afternoon bago siya gumawa ng decision na yan. And meron kasing mga usap-usapan na baka maling datos yung nakakarating kay Presidente, kaya siya nag-decision agad na January 31, deadline. Actually, December 31 yung deadline. So now na nagkaroon ng extension, what does it say about the decision of the President? Is it really possible na meron ngang maling datos? Especially nagkaroon po kayo ng hearing sa Kongreso. Baka meron din po kayong mga detalye na nakuha. Tama ba yung mga numero na sinasabi nila that we have enough units para sa biyahe?
Most likely the actual or the real data that was given in the last meeting with the President, baka hindi siya accurate. For example, no, yung sa tinatawag nilang rationalization, nung tinatawag po nating ruta, 10% pa lamang yung accomplish nila out of 1,900. So kung sa 10%, baka mga 194 lamang yon yung nabibigyan natin ng rationalization. And in this program, you have to rationalize first bago ka mag-consolidate. We have consolidated already 76% in accordance with that data. So makikita mo kung hindi balanse yung consolidation at yung tinatawag nating rationalization, magkakaroon talaga ng lag eh. Talaga marami mga kooperatiba ang hindi makakabayad. Bakit? Kasi kakaunti pa lang yung nara-rationalize nila eh. And ang problem doon, nakita namin doon sa hearing that naandun yung tinatawag nating korupsyon. Sa pag-i-issue nila ng tinatawag nila ng ruta, ibinibigay nila ito sa iba eh. Kaya nga, doon sa hearing, kung mapapansin po ninyo, ay maraming mga kooperatiba ang talagang nagko-complain kung bakit itong rationalization ng ruta ay hindi agad nabibigyan ng aksyon ng DOTR. So most likely, ito yung reason ng Presidente. Kaya in-extend niya itong ating tinatawag na deadline. And I'm pretty sure with the direction that was instructed to us by the speaker, we have to dig deeper to the problem. Kasi nga lumalabas doon sa hearing kanina that at least 400,000 pesos ang binibigay doon sa kooperatiba, and unfortunately, hindi ito lumalabas doon sa book of accounts ng cooperative. And this is in violation of the CDA rule. And yun na nga, iniimbitahan na rin namin ng CDA, iniimbitahan na rin namin ng PCC, and we will be inviting over also those members of the cooperative. Dahil hindi nagbabalanse. Yung sinasabi ng kanilang mga members at tinatanggal nila yung kanilang members sa pagiging opisyal upang sa ganon, siguro masolo nila yung binibigay ng mga manufacturers. And ito yung maaari nating iwasan dito, yung tinatawag nating bidding process. Kapag na-implement to, I'm pretty sure may iwasan yan.
Okay. Congressman Dan, having said that, no, there is a school of thought na parang kahit na i-delay natin, bigyan natin ng extend natin 10 beses, we will be besieged and beset by the exact same problems that we faced the previous deadline and the deadline before that, and so on and so forth. So, meron ba tayong definitive solution to all of this base sa inyong mga diskusyon sa Kamara? At pagdating naman po sa pagbibili ng mga modern jeep, hindi ba pwede na i-mandate na lang kung saan ba pwede talaga bilhin yung pinakamurang unit? For example, na-interview namin dito yung Francisco Motors saying they can make 100% local jeepneys since a couple of years ago. Na-figure out daw nila yung drivetrain, kung paano gawin, and therefore they don't have to import anymore. So ano po ba talaga yung modus na nakikita ninyo with the LTFRB or whatever, or whichever part in the supply chain?
It all boils down sa hindi nila kinumpleto yung proseso ng procurement. Isipin mo, out of the 250,000 na mga units, 7,664 na yun na-procure ng ating pong mga cooperatives. And out of that is 2.6, ang pinaka-presyo nila is 2.6 million. So that is already 14.2 billion. Hindi sila nag-undergo ng process ng bidding. Yung ang sinasabi natin na hindi nila kinumpleto yung process. Why? Bakit hindi sila naglagay ng isang polisiya na dapat ang mga cooperatives and the corporation will undergo the specific bidding? Kung nilagyan lamang nila ito, hindi magkakaroon ng problema eh. Hinayaan nila yung mga young cooperatives to deal with the different manufacturers. Ang ginagawa nila, nagkakaroon sila ng fixed price of auction. Nagpapataasan ng presyo yung mga manufacturers eh. And as a matter of fact, doon nga lumabas yung merong 400,000 na binibigay yung mga manufacturers sa mga cooperative. And yun ang nakita namin na pinagsimulan ng korupsyon. And this will all stop. This will all stop if there is a transparent bidding that will be conducted by the cooperative, and this will be a circular na manggagaling doon sa DOTR. Without this, magpapatuloy yung korupsyon.
Alright, Kong, we'll leave it there, no, for now. Pero hopefully, you'll take our call again after a few more hearings or so para makakuha kami ng update mula sa inyo. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Santa Rosa Representative Dan Fernandez. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Alright, break muna tayo. Pero right after that, kamustahin natin ang relationship between President Bongbong Marcos and his second-in-command, Vice President Sara Duterte, after their successful 2022 campaign to power. We'll discuss the optics and the juicy soundbites later on. Don't go away.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News.
All right, last night, we were talking about Vice President Sara Duterte's speech that she did or she gave in Davao about running for office once again. But this time, we actually have a new soundbite still from VP Sara answering a question about the status of the UniTeam. Pakinggan natin.
Ang UniTeam ay tandem namin nung pagtakbo namin as President and Vice President nung nakaraang eleksyon. Yun ang UniTeam. Ngayon, kaming dalawa ay na-elect na as President and Vice President at pareho kaming nagtatrabaho para sa ating bansa.
Napaka-open for interpretation ng statement ni VP Sara, don't you think?
Oo, sunod-sunod na open to interpretation. Hindi ko tuloy alam kung, alam mo yun, parang, where is this going? Pero again, I'm so reminded, you're right. It reminds me of PRRD.
Diba?
Oo.
And parang kagaya kahapon, si Attorney Harry Roque rin yung nag-i-interpret ng statement for us. Parang yun nangyari kahapon. Although, ilang mga political analysts na rin yung nakausap natin tungkol dito sa UniTeam. And
Hindi lang tayo ang nagsa-speculate dito.
Hindi lang.
Marami.
Na parang sinasabi nila na marami na rin namang mga points na pwede nating i-observe para malaman if there's still a UniTeam or wala na. Kabilang na dyan yung issue ng ICC.
Yung pagkasagot kasi ni VP Sara, parang iniisip pa niya yung mga words as it comes out. Pero ito nga, noong Tuesday na nagpa-interview si Presidente sa GMA, ang nabanggit niya doon nung natanong siya about this whole VP Sara thing, ang sagot ng Presidente is, I think she is testing the waters to see what the reaction will be. Now, I think reporters try to seek a clarification over her speech, over her statements, pero ito lang, ang nabigay sa atin ni VP Sara.
I think ang confusion is piecemeal ang appreciation ng mga tao doon sa mga sinasabi ko. Ibig sabihin, tinatanggal nila ang isang linya para sabihin kung ano yung gusto nila na interpretation.
Ma'am, you're testing the waters daw po, sabi ni PBBM. Ano magsabi niyo po doon?
Hindi pa po kami nagkakausap ni Pangulong Marcos about sa election.
Hindi pa sila nagkakausap, pero mukhang magkakasama sila sa isang event soon. Pero malaman din yung sagot ni VP Sara tungkol naman kay Speaker Martin Romualdez.
Ma'am, kamusta po yung relationship with Speaker Romualdez na po? Kamusta po relationship niyo with Speaker Romualdez?
Sa tingin mo, kamusta kaya relasyon namin dalawa? The very best description and comment kung ano ang relasyon namin ni Speaker Martin Romualdez is galing kay Senator Amy Marcos. Marami ang hindi nakakaintindi kung bakit inaatake mo ang kaalyado ng administrasyon.
So, napaka-Socratic ni VP, no? Ano sa tingin mo ang relasyon namin? Binalik yung tanong
Titingnan natin yan sa susunod na departure statement ni PBBM. Kasi remember, doon nangyari yung magka-angkla sila ni House Speaker Romualdez.
Okay, so ikaw, anong personally, since ikaw yung pupunta doon, ano yung
titingnan
aabangan
natin kung magka-angkla uli sila or kung magpapansinan sila.
Alright, so meron nga pang issue na naman, no, na kumbaga, humabol kay VP Sara. Ito na naman yung Davao Death Squad. Bigla, di ba naalala mo, sabi niya, alam mo, nung nangangampanya ako, wala naman silang binring up na Davao Death Squad, pero ngayon, biglang meron na. Sabi nga ni VP Sara, willing naman daw siya harapin ang any kaso, pero only sa Philippine courts and only before a Filipino judge. So, marami pa yata tayong abangang blind item. Pero abangan ko muna yung sinabi mong departure speech. Kailan ang schedule niya?
Kung kailan yung kasunod nun, titingnan natin si VP Sara at saka si House Speaker Martin Romualdez. And remember, laging si VP Sara ang caretaker kapag umaalis si PBBM. So pag nabago yan, it says a lot.
Okay.
Baka hindi naman mabago. Let's see.
Okay, let's leave it there, no, for another day until that departure speech. Tapos kukulitin ulit natin si Mase kung ano bang naobserbahan niya. Pero before we go tonight, ang big picture natin takes us back to the armed conflict in Gaza. Yun nga, it's still not over, and who you're seeing now on your screens is Sergeant First Class Cedric Garin, an Israeli soldier of Filipino descent who was one of the 21 IDF soldiers who were killed in explosions earlier this week. Garin's mother is a native of Isabela and currently resides in Tel Aviv. His father, meanwhile, hails from General Santos City. The Philippine Embassy in Israel is now working on bringing Sergeant Garin's father to Israel to mourn their loss as a family. My heart really goes out to, not just to the family of Sergeant Garin, pero lahat ng naapektuhan nitong gera.
Yeah, apakadami nun.
At saka napakatagal na.
Yes.
Napakadaming inosente na walang kinalaman sa mga pinag-aawayan. Siguro iwan na natin doon. That's it for the big story tonight. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thank you for tuning in. Good night, everyone.